The interview this week on the Chirp Podcast with Darren Millard, Corey Schneider, new NHL Network analyst. He tells us what's the difference between the best shot in the National Hockey League and the hardest shot, and what is Jack Campbell going through, and that situation in Edmonton. Why is it awkward? The explanation next.
Boys, I'm Mike today. Just let everyone know, don't say anything stupid.
Heads up! Oh, how'd that feel, old man? That's a disgrace! That's a disgrace! What a joke! I'm gonna run you, I'm just waiting for my shift!
Continue to take in last week's conversation with Greg Cronin. How honest was that? Just letting you, not behind the curtain, but in his living room, watching the game and just spilling everything about the journey for the 60-year-old. The favorite line, though, out of the whole thing that keeps being texted to me over and over, press box parasite. He's not going to be one of those guys to work in the system and climbing up the ladder by making sure that everybody knows his name. That was an awesome word. T-shirts have to be made. Press box parasite. I'm no press box parasite. We'll reflect on that as we go along and follow Greg Cronin's career with the Anaheim Ducks, another big win the other night. But the story around the National Hockey League occurring over the course of the weekend involving the Edmonton Oilers, and Corey Schneider's in the green room, and Corey, we'll get to you in just a second. Edmonton making the change. Jay Woodcroft is out, replaced 13 games in by Chris Knobloch. I thought it was interesting, and this gives you an idea of how confident they were that things would turn around going into the San Jose game. They weren't thinking about making a change there. They had no feelers out, as far as I know, and the people that I've talked to, about replacing Jay Woodcroft. Then they lose to San Jose, who'd only won one game before that, and everything caved in on them. And then they went out and they made the offer to Chris Knobloch, and Jay ends up winning a hockey game against the Seattle Kraken, but he was already done. He was the lame duck coach just didn't know it at that time. Look, you can't really debate making the coaching change. I would have done something else if you could. Kenny Holland said he tried, and there was no trades available, but they were going to turn it around. The Edmonton Oilers were going to make the playoffs under Jay Woodcroft. Were they going to win the Stanley Cup? We'll never know that. Where the situation becomes a little difficult to digest for me is how awkward it must be for Connor McDavid. Now, I'm not saying Connor's done anything here. He said he didn't have any idea that Knobloch was on the radar. I take him at his word. I don't think Connor McDavid is any more demanding than any other star player. Does he have more of a voice? Of course he does. I'm not that naive. But here's the thing. The Oilers brought in his former agent in Jeff Jackson to be president of the hockey club. That's a sign that you want things in place when Connor's contract is up in 2 years. So he can negotiate at not the end of this year, but the end of the next year. He can negotiate an extension. That makes sense to have allies of Connor, people that Connor's familiar with, to make sure that you ink him to a extension. That's great. You double down, though, with Chris Knobloch, his junior coach in Erie. And Chris, on his own merit, has won a couple of championships in major junior in 2 different leagues and has experience as an assistant in the National Hockey League and head coach in the American Hockey League. But he's never been a head coach. And whether you are the most ardent Chris Knobloch fan, whether you are the Connor McDavid supporter that says he didn't have anything to do with that, you can't ignore that Jeff Jackson is his former agent and Chris Knobloch was Connor McDavid's junior coach. Those two things go together, and that makes it awkward. You can't get by it. So that gets to, even if you're, say, everything's above board, it's awkward. And I don't know how there's a way to get around that. Connor's just going to go out and he's going to score 1 million goals and he's going to be fine. They'll make the playoffs. We'll see what happens down the road with this. But it just put Connor in an uncomfortable position because Knobloch is a first-time National Hockey League coach. So I wanted to get that off my chest. Wish Chris the best, and I think the Oilers will still make the playoffs, and we'll see whether they can challenge for home ice advantage. There's a lot of runway left in this thing. We'll get the Jack Campbell situation because he was the big casualty along with Jay Woodcroft. They both lost their jobs in the National Hockey League. Jack Campbell sent down to Bakersfield. That was the first domino to fall in this, and there's a guy that we instantly thought of that could relate to this because he went through some challenging times and was a high-profile goaltender in the National Hockey League, and Corey Schneider. First-round pick in Vancouver. You know his resume, won over 100 games, but was bought out by the New Jersey Devils after being part of one of the big draft day trades in NHL history. And he had to find his way and deal with all of the second-guessing that comes with that type of situation. So Jack Campbell, what he's going through the eyes and the experience of Corey Schneider, who is now working on NHL Network as a studio analyst, as he joins us on the Chirp Podcast with Darren Millard. You more nervous about the TV lights being on or after the national anthem standing in the crease?
I honestly would say the TV lights the first time, and now I feel a bit better about them.
How long did it take you to get settled in that first show?
I've done a little bit of it before with NBC Sports and Lineage Network, so I wasn't too unfamiliar with it. It was more just the mannerisms. When I was doing MSG intermission stuff pregame, you're looking at the camera, you're looking at your host Shannon, and I'm sometimes trying to figure out who I'm looking at, and they're like, "Hey, 30,000 people in the camera, talking to Shannon, talk to her." So it was more just getting those mannerisms and where to look at the right time down.
You ever think about how many people are watching?
Not really. I mean, again, having been used to playing, I think that helps. Just knowing that there are 20,000 people there and then more on TV. It's less that. It's more just trying to run through all the things in your head and trying to make sure you're hitting. It's like a golf swing. If you have too many things going on through your head as you're swinging, then you're not going to hit it well. So it's more just quieting all those ideas and thoughts and overthinking of it in my head and just trying to simplify.
Did you have a pregame routine when you played?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It gets
Does any of that filter over to your broadcasting? Like, do you fit any of that stuff in?
You know what? Not yet. I haven't done enough of it yet to come up with a routine. My routine changed over the years, depending on how I was playing or what level I was at. So we had to make some modifications to the pregame routine. So I'm trying to, when I'm doing only a couple nights a month, it's kind of hard. I kind of forget what my routine is. So I got to find one first.
That's pretty good, actually. Just remember, the host is the boss. As a host, I tell the players all the time, listen to me. Don't think, just listen to me. And more people should respect their hosts. What was the most intense you ever got with your pregame routine?
I used to always do some visualization before the game. Like I would get my gloves and throw my headphones on and play a song or two to sort of try to visualize the game before it happened. Not exactly, but just certain situations and scenarios, just so that way, I could see it in my head and replay it there before, you got out there. But it goes quickly, man. The pregame, you have your meetings, you get a snack, you get treatment. So by the time the meeting ends, the time you're getting dressed for warm-ups, you only have about 20, 25 minutes. So I had to learn how to condense and, short circuit, or if a meeting ran long, you kind of have to be able to adapt. So, but that point where I tried to find a quiet place, people thought I was probably crazy because I couldn't hear them. I had my noise cancelers in, and I'm sitting in some random, back room closet or hallway beneath the stands, doing my goalie movements. And I just assumed they thought I was the weird goalie. So I never knew what people thought of me, but that's sort of where I try to get lost and just really focus in before the game started.
I wasn't going to go down this path, but you've tweaked my memory. I saw a shot of you on the ice. Either you were on the bench or it was on the ice, and you were doing these eye movements one time. and it was at an All-Star game. I had Elliot Friedman ask you about it, and you played it down. Do you know what I'm talking about with the eye movements?
I do, yeah. I'm pretty, especially in the All-Star game where I was coming in cold and I trying to get the eyeballs moving a little bit to at least see the puck if I could.
So what were you like? You're moving the eyes all around, and the camera just happened to catch you perfectly, and it was like you were doing push-ups and side squats with your eyes.
Well, I mean, I think people forget that your eyes are muscles too. So I mean, they're the most important part of the job as a goalie. So I started to get into a habit of kind of massaging the corners of my eyes, or just kind of trying to loosen those up, and then, like you said, just almost stretching them out a little bit, just making sure I had my full peripheral vision working. So I just like to stretch the eyeballs out a little bit to make sure I'm hitting all my points. It may sound silly saying it out loud, but again, people forget the eyeballs are muscles too. So you got to warm those up just like every other part of your body.
I'm doing it right now. I'm trying to
Yeah,
trying to
try
do
it.
it.
It makes me feel dizzy.
It totally does. Absolutely. Jack Campbell's going through a really tough time. What should he lean on as we talk about things that make you ready to play?
Yeah, it's a tough scenario. I've been through it. Having been in New Jersey and getting waived and sent down with a big contract. It's not a good feeling. And I think you kind of go down there at the lowest of the low. And it's tricky because the American League, while it's a good league, it's definitely a little less organized than NHL. So you think you're going to go down there and play the same game, and you're not. It's just more mistakes happen, crazier bounces happen. Guys just aren't in the positions you're used to them being in. So it's easy to kind of go down there and have a bad start because it is such almost a shock to what you're used to. But for me, eventually I got around to it. It's just you're in the NHL for a reason. I think you have to remember that and remember why. And the only way I've ever gotten out of a problem when I played was to work my way out of it. You can't just hope and pray or just think things are going to change. You got to put the work in, and whether that's getting back to basics, whether that's resetting your mind and just kind of starting over again, you have to find that blank slate and just build back up from there. So I haven't really been following him since he got sent down, but again, it's not going to go great to begin with. It's a challenge.
And it didn't, Corey. It didn't. They
Right.
put him right in, and I didn't like the fact that he went down and he played a couple of games right away. Because if you're going to go down and find your game, you'd like to work. I think you'd like to work on it a little bit. So I thought that put him in an awkward spot. If you got his number, what would you say to him, like goalie to goalie?
Again, I don't know him personally, but just having been through it, I would say, hey, look, you're an NHL goalie for a reason. They signed you that contract for a reason. Remember who that guy is. Remember who you were and what helped you get to the point you got to. Think back to positive times. Sometimes I go back and watch highlights of, clips of games when I was playing really well, and just remember what I looked like, remember what that feeling was like. Because it's easy to lose that feeling. That's what goaltending is. It's confidence. It's having that feeling. So I think for him, if he can just remember what got him to that place in the first place and not think so much about what's happened this season or in the immediacy, you can start to you are again. Because I think as a goalie, you can get lost. You say, "What am I? What is my style? What's my confidence? What does it feel like to feel good again?" And I think you just have to try to recreate that feeling as best you can.
Not speaking for him, but when it goes a different direction, does it haunt you 24/7? Is it always in your mind? Can you block it out during a game or leading up to a game?
I think that's a challenging part. It's to stop that feeling of here we go again. I think as a goalie, especially in a Canadian market, where just the microscope's on you, and as a goalie in particular, we choose this position, this profession. You take the good and the bad that comes with it, and that's a lot of attention and focus. So, from what I can tell, he's a hardworking guy. I think he wants to do well, and sometimes when you try too hard, you get a little tight or you get a little nervous, and you can overthink things. I'm not saying that's what he's doing or what he has done, but I think you just have to, like you said, take a step back, take a deep breath, and not live in what's going to happen. Just live in the moment. Make the next save. Don't worry about what's going to happen 5 minutes from now or in the third period or all the bad things that could happen. I think sometimes as a goalie, you get sped up when you look at the game as a 60-minute entity. And like, man, that's a long time. Like 60 minutes is a long time for things to go wrong. And if you just break the game down into 3 or 5 minute segments, increments, just say, all right, let's just get through this 5, and then we'll get through the next 5. And it becomes more manageable. So, my hope is for him that he can, like I said, just reset mentally and not overthink about what could go wrong and just, stay in control and stay in charge of the moment.
What was the easiest part of the game that became hard during that stretch?
Yeah, I think I kind of said it along the way, but for a long time, the game just made sense to me. It just, you knew where the puck was going to go. You knew who was going to shoot it. You were ahead of it. You were anticipating. People sometimes call it guessing, but when you're feeling good, it's called anticipating. So the flow of the game just made sense to me. I had a really good idea of what was going to happen next, and that gave me an advantage. And then all of a sudden, I don't know when it was a physical issue that slowed me down, or if it was a mental issue of trying to be too perfect all the time. But all of a sudden, just things were happening. It didn't quite make sense. A guy shot it when I wasn't expecting him to, or the guy made the extra pass when I thought he was going to shoot it, or a puck ricocheted and went a different way than I was anticipating. And all of a sudden, it just seemed like I was chasing the game a little bit. I wasn't ahead of it. And I think as a goalie, when you feel like you're ahead of the game, everything looks easy. And then all of a sudden, when you're behind and you're guessing, you're late on pucks, then you can look pretty bad. So I can't exactly pinpoint, where along the way it happens or why it happens, and that's part of the mystery of goaltending. But when it starts going downhill, it can be hard to stop that snowball.
Guys have told me even rims, just making a stop there, it became challenging. You got tense, like something as routine as that. You're not even facing a shot, and it became a challenge.
Yeah, again, I think it becomes to overthinking it. You start to think about what can go wrong, and then all of a sudden, the old adage that Murphy's Law, what can go wrong will go wrong. And I think once you get that in your head that something bad's about to happen, then eventually something bad is going to happen. So I think that's that fine line of confidence and not naivete, but just, that not thinking about all the extra stuff. And then all of a sudden you let that noise in a little bit, or you start to worry about what's going to happen. And it just hinders you from staying in the moment and doing your job and not worrying about the bad bounces. Along the way, sometimes it just seems like when bad things happen, they keep happening off a skating in, off your defenseman and in, bad deflection. I had a game in Anaheim, I think, where 3 pucks were knocked into my own net by my own teammates, and we lost, 5-3. And it was like, man, like what else can go wrong? And it's never as bad as it seems, just like it's never as good as it seems. So that's why they say goaltending, you sort of have to keep that even keel and not get too high and too low, because it's easy to live and die with every single bounce and every single play that comes your way.
I won't say his name, but I have a buddy who was once promoted to play on a line with a guy named Murphy. And he said, no, I'm not playing with a guy who's named after Murphy's Law. Obviously wasn't, but he's like, no, I don't want anywhere near that mojo. None of that.
Well, I mean, that's superstitious. I mean, I'm a goalie.
Yeah, exactly.
I like to say I'm not superstitious. I'm just a little stitious, just a little bit.
So. What's a good goalie environment? What's a challenging goalie environment? Can you put it into terms of what we're watching this year in the National Hockey League?
Yeah, I mean, for me as a goalie, I think it's a great thing and a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. The league is more skilled than ever. These kids are playing earlier than ever because they're ready physically, skill-wise, talent-wise. They deserve to play in the league.
And affordable.
And affordable. And I think that's a big part of it. I think the salary cap has created this dearth of middle class, and you got to find cheap young alternatives to pay your superstars. But that's another debate. Yeah, I mean, I find that kids they don't play as complete a game as they used to, and that's okay. I mean, if you want to have a third line grind line and a fourth line fighting line, that's not exciting for the game. So I understand the need to open things up and showcase the creativity. But what you're finding is kids, I think, are skipping a step. They're so eager to get from college or junior or the European League right to the NHL. You don't go through that process of learning and making mistakes and being corrected. And I think as coaches now, your hands are a bit tied because you have to play these guys because they can create offense. They're cheap. You want to develop them, but you don't have the time to sit them down and say, hey, here's how you play defensive zone. Here's stick positioning. Here's how you win a wall battle. All those little things that lead to more defense. And, I'm not saying we need to go back to the neutral zone trap and shut it down, but every single night I watch these incredible plays, but I also see a lot of plays that are entirely preventable if guys just were a little bit smoother with the puck, if they weren't trying to make some crazy play instead of just making the safe play. So it's a bit of a catch-22. And as a fan, I'm sure the offense and the mistakes are awesome to watch, but as a goalie and somebody who grew up in the league, where defense was a priority and you had to learn, you started in the fourth line, you went to the American League, you couldn't play in the league until you could defend. That whole mantra seems to have shifted. So again, I'm not bagging on it because again, it's exciting and that's what the league wants. But as a goalie, especially October and November, when you're installing new systems and new guys into your team and there's just mistakes everywhere, it's a nightmare to watch. It gives me anxiety. So I'm kind of glad I got out when I did.
Who has a good environment in the league that you would say that would be helpful for a goaltender to play behind?
Yeah, I mean, a couple come to mind. Boston. That's not taking away. I think Ullmark and Swayman are right up there with Sorokin and Varley as the best goalie team in the league. So I think they're incredibly talented. But I think part of what breeds confidence is structure and knowing what you're going to get in front of you.
Yeah.
I think as a goalie, when you show up to the rink and you're like, am I going to get 6 hung on me tonight because my team's going to be a no-show defensively? Then you start thinking, thoughts go through your head about, is the back door open? Is this guy going to hit the trailer and then hit another guy? You're like I said, you're guessing a little bit, but when you go behind a team that you can rely on their structure, you say, hey, they're going to give me the shot. Or if I make 8 to 10 grade A's tonight, we're going to win the game. I think having that confidence and knowing your role can make a big difference in your play. And Boston, I think to me is, from the time I came to the league, so almost 15 years now, has probably been the most structured, organized team defensively that I've ever played against. They don't make too many mistakes. They're predictable in what they do. And another team that comes to mind right now is Dallas with Ottinger down there. They have Heiskanen and Suter and some other really good defensemen back there. They play a full team defensive game. I think when you're behind that system, that's not to take away anything from the goalies. You got to still stop the puck when you got to stop the puck. But it makes your life a little bit easier when you show up every night saying, all right, I know what to expect. I have a good idea how the game is going to go, and I just have to manage the game and make some saves when I need to make them. And we'll probably have a good chance of winning. I think that's a good feeling to have.
What's the perfect number of shots to face in a game?
33.
Yeah.
you want to, in case you give up 3, you want to have enough shots where your save percentage is above 90.
That's perfect.
Yeah. You got to have the numbers in mind because that's how you get judged by everybody, whether it matters or not. Under 30 depends, can be too few, and then over 35 can be a bit too many. So I think 33 is a good solid number for me.
You haven't done any thought on that.
I actually just came to my mind, but I had thought about
Really?
the kind of ratios and the numbers you need to try to hit as a goalie. So I hope that made sense.
That's right on the money. That's math class right there. Outstanding stuff. Let's go through some things. Best shot that you ever faced, and there's some criteria here. Hardest shot.
Yeah, there's a difference between best shot and hardest shot. And
Yeah.
to your point, I would say the hardest straight up was Shea Weber. His was almost like you almost didn't even hear it. It was almost like a silencer. It just got on you in a hurry, and when it hit you, it hurt. It's not like this big skyscraping windup. He would just lean into it, and just it came at you in a hurry. So I think Brent Burns had a pretty heavy one too. I think more defenseman when it comes to hard shots because they got to get it through from the blue line. Best shot to me, it was guys like in and around the net who always scored from these impossible angles. That just like, you're like, there's no way he can, and he puts it in. Sid was like that a little bit. Maybe not the best release per se, but just found a way to always score from below the goal line or right on the goal line. One guy I always had a hard time with was Vladimir Tarasenko when he was in his prime. He was one of the guys, he held his hands up high together. And when you have your hands up high, you can't tell if you're going to shoot or pass, but he was able to just fling it and just get a lot on the puck from that position. Usually guys have to lower that bottom hand to really lean into it, but he'd kind of hold his hands up high here and stick handling and bang, just flick his wrist and the puck was off the tape and in the net. So he was one guy that always stood out to me. And you got your obvious guys like Stamkos and Ovechkin, but they almost just overpower you to a point and they're just natural goal scorers. But when it came to, actual shot release and things like that, Sid and Vladimir Tarasenko are two guys that come to my mind.
I listen to announcers who have never played goal will say, hey, that was a backhand. That's the toughest shot for a goaltender to face. Is it really that hard?
Depends on who's taking it.
Yeah. Really?
It's tough because it can go either way. They can usually backhanders come when they're moving laterally. You very rarely get a stationary backhand shot, and those are easy. It's when the guy's sort of crossing from your right to left, and he's a lefty on his backhand, so you're trying to stay with him and track him, and you don't know when he's going to shoot, and he sort of flings it at you, or he yanks it and goes back the other way, and you've over pursued. So, it kind of depends on the scenario and who's taking it, but, it is hard to predict. It's hard to tell. Like sometimes they flutter it off their backhand and just, fools you, and sometimes they go off the bar and in on the backhand. So I think it all depends on who's taking it in the situation. But yeah, there's times when they can be tricky because you can't really read them off the blade very well.
Ovi's one-timer. How many times did you stop it, and did you give yourself a pat in the back every time you did?
Yeah, there was a few times. I did the game I was calling the game for MSG with the Islanders in Washington last week, and they had the stats and, who Ovi scored on. And I kind of called in the stat guys, like, how many do you have on me? Because, I played in this division for a while, and I think he only scored 8 goals on me in his career, which I will take. But there was one night when it was the last game of the year. We had actually clinched for the playoffs. It was the year we made the playoffs, and the year Taylor Hall won the MVP. So we sat out a bunch of our regulars. Ovi was at 48 goals for the year, and they put me in, and we were missing like Andy Green, Sammy Vatanen, and Travis Zajac. All my defensive guys were out to rest them. And Ovi skating around a warm up looking at me. He's like, I need 50, give me 3 tonight. Give me 3. And I was like, I've been struggling. I kind of lost the job going to the playoffs. I was like, hey, I can't, Ovi. Like, I'd love to, but I can't. He was at 47, excuse me. So he needed 3 to get to 50. He must have had 28 shot attempts. Like guys were on like breakaways and they turn around and look for Ovi just to beat him. And I think he got 13, like he got some absurd number of shots on goal and scored 2 goals, but he didn't get the third. So I kept him at 49 for the year. So that was my claim to fame against him. But yeah, anytime you stop an Ovi one timer, it's a good feeling. It's not an easy thing to do.
Can we go back to warm up? You and Ovi are actually having that conversation?
Well, it was the last game of the year. They had made it, we had made it. So we both clinched. We couldn't really do any difference in seeding. Yeah. So, I usually stretch out by the red line, and he's whirling around, and I know he's got 47. So he's like, Schneitz, I need 3 tonight. I need 50. Give me 50. I'm kind of like, can't, buddy. Like, I'd love to, but I can't, So that's just some of the banter that goes on sometimes with the red lines when guys are not, it's not a high pressure stake situation.
What are you trying to do when you go over for that one timer?
Yeah, you got to, like I said, they sort of changed up a little bit where he tried to maybe do that shot pass into the crease if you were over pursued, but you just had to get ahead of it. You almost had to anticipate Karlsson making that pass from the top. Our strategy, at least in New Jersey, because we played them so often, was we literally tried to take Ovi away. We almost had a guy stand next to him and said, all right, we'll play the other guys 4-on-3 and see if he can score on us from there. We almost just have to anticipate that, it's going to Karlsson, it's going right to Ovi, so I'm going to get a bit of a head start. And they're creative. They would switch it up, or Karlsson would try to, maybe surprise you with a quick shot, or, Ovi would send it back across. But literally just try to get ahead of it, get as far out as you can without, losing your crease and getting out of the play, and just seal up your arms and your body, because a lot of his pucks, they almost come off with a bit of a wobble because he gets bad passes and he hits bad passes. He hits, wobbly pucks, and they almost dip and dive and move on you. So you see a lot of pucks sort of go through guys' arms or just above their pads and hands. So I always just tried to make sure that I got as tight as I could. And if he picked barring in or posting in on me from there, then you kind of live with it and take your chances. But I just didn't want to let him go through me. So that was my biggest goal.
His teammate, Evgeny Kuznetsov, with that slow shootout move. You okay with it?
I mean, as long as it's within the rules, it's fine with me.
That's not an answer. Come on, you're facing him, and he's coming in doing that.
I don't love it because I wasn't very good at shootouts. So, but I mean, it's a tremendously skilled move. So again, it's one of those things like, oh, geez, it's all right. You gotta deal with what you're given. So I can't really complain a whole lot about it. Kuznetsov, for my money, is one of the when he wants to be and when he's on, he's one of the better players in the league. So if he's got that move, it's kind of like the tush push in football, right? It's like, should they outlaw it? Should they ban it? But if you perfect it and you're that good at it, everyone can do it. Why doesn't everybody just do it then if they can score? So it takes more than that, and he's got the talent to do it. So I wouldn't take that ability away from him.
And a bunch of other teams have tried the tush push and they can't do it. So
exactly. So
leave it in. Never anticipated at this point in my career I'd be talking about the tush push, but here we are.
2023.
2026, the Olympics. Who are Team USA's goalies?
I mean, I think Ottinger is in the mix for sure. Young enough, will be good. I think there's still 3 guys right now that are playing really well: Ottinger, Hellebuck, and Demko. I think assuming Demko stays healthy and continues to play the way he is this year and has, aside from maybe last year, but unless I'm missing some American guys in there that I can't think of. But
that's who I had.
Yeah, those are the 3 to me that stand out. Maybe Ottinger being the starter because Hellebuck will be in his mid-30s at that point, I think, or early to mid-30s, and Demko will be about 30, so Ottinger's probably the youngest, and we'll have, I think Dallas has got some good playoff runs in them, so he'll probably have the experience at that point. So I would say Ottinger is the starter with Demko and Hellebuck as the backups.
What if I would have made you the backup in your early 30s? Would you have told me to go to hell?
Well, the way I played in my early 30s, maybe. I don't know if I'm in the mix.
That wasn't what I was meaning, man.
Yeah. I made the World Cup in 2016. I was 30, so there you go. So maybe I would have been all right.
Like, when does it start to dip? Can you feel it? What do you have to do to battle back against that age part? Yeah,
everyone's different. Again, goalies, a lot of times it seems injury related. Like I had the hip surgery at 32 or 33, and not that it wasn't the same, but it's hard to come back from. It's hard to get to that level. And I wasn't, an uber athlete where like I was incredibly athletic and could get away with it for a long time. Like my athleticism was all right, and I was more my timing and my reads and precision. So I think even just losing 5 or 10% of your timing and quickness can, lead to not being exactly on time and where you need to be. So, but you look around and guys are just eventually, Bishop had to retire with injuries, Holtby's out with injuries, Carey Price injured, Tuukka, all at that 34 to 36 range. So the amount of wear and tear you put on your body for your whole life and career, someone's got to give eventually. Very rarely do you see the Roberto Luongos and Marc-Andre Fleury's and Pekka Rinnes who play until they're 40, because it takes a lot of dedication and hard work, and B, some luck, just to avoid maybe that big catastrophic one or that real wear and tear injury. So it's hard to say for everybody. Everyone's different. Craig Anderson played forever, so it just depends on your style and how well you take care of yourself. And again, just sometimes being lucky.
After game 15 of a season, did something hurt every time that you played?
When I was younger, no. Again, it all started kind of happening once I got into my early 30s, where you felt it a little bit more. You get a little more sore. Things are acting up a little bit more, and that's just natural. I think everyone's that way, but the position's so demanding now. There's no nights off. There's no gimme games. Even the teams that aren't good, quote unquote, are still good. And coaches play to win every single night. It's not, when I came to the league, I said it was, if you were a good team like we were in Vancouver, you could usually pencil in games to your backup. Like, all right, we're going to catch this team on a back-to-back at home. That'll be a win. You'll get an easy night there. Now it's, the coach is going to play who's he thinks is going to win, and whether that means you played the night before or you played too much, they're going to throw you in. It's not going to be an easy game. So there are very few nights where you have a night off, or we won 6-1 and I only had 23 shots. Like, that seems to be the exception, not the rule. So I think just the athleticism involved and the amount of movement and traffic and skill, it just puts more stress on goalies' bodies than ever.
We know how talented our buddy Jack Hughes is. Are we learning how much he means to the New Jersey Devils through his absence?
I think so, for sure. I mean, they have a great young team there, aside from Jack, but he is absolutely the engine that I think drives that bus. And I think any team, if you took Austin Matthews away from the Leafs or Connor McDavid from the Oilers, you saw what happened when he was out for a little while. I think he's in that echelon of player in terms of, a top 5-10 player in the league who is instant offense. He makes the game so much easier for everybody else the way he's able to gain the zone, win the puck back, possess the puck, keep defenses at bay. It's unique. There's not many guys who can do it. So, having known Jack personally and play with him, and he lived with us for a little bit there his rookie year, just getting to see inside of his head and his mentality. It's not surprising, but I think he's absolutely by far the most important player in that team. And that's nothing to take away from, the Hischiers and the Brats and the Dougie Hamiltons, because they're all great players. But I think once Jack took that step, you saw the team take a step last year. And I think that's no coincidence.
What was he best at when he lived with you? Was he tidy?
He actually was.
Yeah.
He actually was. He had the basement to himself, and he kept it clean. We tried to teach him how to cook a little bit, but he's only 18, so I get it. Strong shoe game, good shoe game, good style. He had a good shoe collection, and he was into that kind of stuff. So that was great. But yeah, he was actually an ideal roommate. He kept himself down there when he needed to, and then tidied up and took care of stuff. So it was great having him around.
Yeah, we had that same conversation with him 5-6 weeks ago about the shoe game. And how great it is, and you can wear the shoes, the sneakers with the suits. Were you that guy?
Never. No, I was. Fashion was not my strong suit, but my wife, helped me out with my fashion more than anybody. So I was old school. I got better in terms of like fit and style, but I would never have worn sneakers. I would have been. Well, I played a lot of years under Lou Lamoriello as well, so that didn't help either. He probably would have ripped the sneakers right off my feet if I'd worn them in the rink.
Doorbell's going. Thanks for doing this, buddy. I really appreciate it. Got to pick your brain about a lot of different things. The Rangers, though, they blow me away. You too?
Yeah, I've been surprised at their start. In a year where, especially in the East, everyone's kind of stuck in that murky middle. Everyone's sort of a game or two above or below 500. Aside from Boston, I've been surprised that they're the team that's kind of separated themselves this early. But they have all the pieces, and maybe the coaching changes help. But we'll see if they can sustain it. But in this league right now, if you can get a head start like that, it's huge. So I've been pretty impressed with the Rangers. They just keep finding ways to win, which I think is a testament. No Adam Fox, some injuries. Igor and Quickie were out for a minute there. So I think a team that can push through those type of injuries and adversity early in the year is a good sign. So hopefully, as a Devils and Islanders guy, you don't hope for them to do well, but it's impressive either way.
Well, you're a brave man because you're wearing the Pats hat today. Was that the only hat of it round, or was that on purpose?
I just had to grab a hat because my hair was messy, but I am a Patriots through and through. So I'll take the last 20 plus years over the last 3. Don't judge us by this isolated incident. Judge us by our entire body of work, please. Thank you.
And nobody can come back to that. There's not a reply to that.
Exactly. So that's why I'm still very proud.
Thanks, Knights.
You got it, guys. Take care.
Was I the only one that heard the doorbell go? Like, the doorbell did go there, right? There was no reaction from Corey, and I felt like I should get him to the door. But then he didn't move, so I followed up with a couple of more. There was no reaction to the doorbell going, which then made me think, did the doorbell go off in my house, and I'm the one that's sitting here not answering my front door? Like, Amazon just leaves everything there. That's back-to-back weeks of really cool conversation. I don't know Corey really, really well. I worked with them, or my friends worked with him on the In Goal Radio podcast, and they've leaned on him over the years. But he can articulate the game and put it in a framework that we all can understand, and that's neat. And I guarantee you this. 10 minutes after we're off the air here, I'll be doing my jumping jacks with my eyeballs. I just hope I don't strain anything with that. There is some news coming out of the National Hockey League General Manager meetings coming out of the Hall of Fame weekend, and congratulations. Perfect timing for Schneider with all the goaltenders going in there. Talking about maybe tweaking overtime, some rule changes there. As one person in hockey operations told me, if that's the biggest concern with our game right now, then the game's in a pretty good spot. And I tend to agree with them. The whole thing about tweaking overtime is it's a possession game. You win the faceoff, and then you wait out the opportunity for a good chance, and you try to either make the defenders tired or you wait for them to make some kind of mistake. It's more like soccer, football. Big Bournemouth fan. Big win the other day. So that's the way that what they're trying to get away from. And then they want the end-to-end rushes, and they think that's exciting. They do. I'm talking about the general managers, by the way. Except the game's not end-to-end throughout regulation, so why does overtime necessarily have to mirror what you want or become something that is a little bit different in the game? So I think we're putting too many expectations on overtime. There's the over and back idea of if you've got the puck in the offensive zone, you can't take it out of the offensive zone or across the red line, center ice, and regroup. I like that idea. Totally put it in, except what happens when there's a violation? Do you have a stoppage? Nobody wants that. Do you have to just give up the puck like my 3-on-3 league in Newmarket, where you just throw it in the other team's zone and they regroup? That's gimmicky. So I like the idea of no over and back, but I don't want stoppages and I don't want gimmicks. So leave it alone, and maybe you have better defenders that force the issue a little bit more. One thing you haven't seen is face-off specialists, guys that take the face-off to start overtime or at a stoppage, and then they just leave the ice. They're almost as good as shootout specialists if it does get to that. But that's a thought project. Do you agree? Let me know. What's your biggest tweak that you would make to overtime? Is there one? How about 2 minutes of 3-on-3, then 2 minutes of 2-on-2, and 1 minute of 1v1? That's as gimmicky as making the team give up possession and throw it in the other team's end if you do an over and back. Tongue in cheek there. It's like the minor kids tournament when you're running out of ice time and it's the gold medal game and you have to go to that in the under 10 tournament in Moosomin, Saskatchewan, or in Reno, Nevada. I don't like the idea of getting rid of the trapezoid. Coaches like the trapezoid because it keeps their goalies in the net. Trapezoid's there. It gives us an opportunity to say the word trapezoid, which I never said before the trapezoid was ever instituted. And if we get rid of the trapezoid, I'll never say it again. Just like repechage in the Olympics. I'll never say repechage outside of every 4 years in the Olympic rowing. Let me know what your thoughts are. Send me the direct message on X or send me an email. You know where to find me. I've given out the email before. Give it a shot. Give it a listen to the great interview with Greg Cronin last week. You'll understand what I mean. The new T-shirts. I'm no press box parasite. I'm cheering for Greg Cronin. Every game. I've watched 2 Anaheim Duck games since then because of Greg Cronin. Just because of him. Thanks for listening. Corey Schneider, love it. Bob Bender, you're awesome. And you, the listener, let's be in touch. And we'll talk next week on The Chirp with Darren Millard.